Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ion Canon podcast, your home for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew, and I'm coming to you from Underworld North Studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. As always, I am joined across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good, and I just got a text from Mon Mothma saying if I donate 300 credits, we are closer to getting our fundraising goals for the Imperial Rebirth Act.
Nice. Wait,
I'm apparently on the list for some reason.
how'd you do that? I'm not on the list. How'd that work?
Yes, she didn't ask me for any money, but I don't know.
She doesn't need
It's
money
fun.
from you. We're good. You
Doesn't
give her.
need
It'd be
money from me.
exploitative
That's
if she asked you.
There we go.
Yeah, it'd be weird to ask your staffer.
Biggest fan. So we're talking about The Mask of Fear by Alexander Freed, which kicks off the Reign of Fear trilogy in stunning fashion, gives us all the gripping political drama, guerrilla action, and moving character stories it promised, and then some. We chart the journeys of Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, Saw Gerrera, and new character Soujen Vak-Nhalis, or however you pronounce his name, through this brilliantly written, intricate tale that may well become an instant classic, an all-time classic. And as you can see on the screen, we got two guests here. First off, we got to get the Daughters of Ferrix and their Star Wars political expertise here. So we got Ellie joining us from the Daughters of Ferrix. How you doing, Ellie?
Doing all right. How are you doing, Matthew?
I'm doing all right. I'm a little under the weather. I may have to bail. I'll try not to bail, but I'll do my best.
Hope not.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Trying to enjoy our best life here in Canada. We had a political transition as well. That's okay.
Yes.
Speaking of Canada, joined from just down the street. This is a book that has Mon Mothma on the cover. There was only one person who is the most appropriate. Literally, you see the social media there, bejeweled Mothma. It's Ash.
Like the Swiftie that she is. And not just that, I'm also wearing my Mon Mothma jumper today.
Yes,
so.
Of course you are. There we go.
And you podcast better be worth it because I'm paying for these tariffs, guys. This podcast gonna be expensive.
You're paying for them personally. All right.
Look.
Coming out of my pocket, man.
we could turn this into a full-blown war if we want to.
There we go. Speaking of which, you do have a guest there, Ash. If you want to show the guest, you have a special timing for it.
Oh.
Yes. The star of the show, Mini Mon, is right there. There we go. So yeah, we're gonna
watching over.
There you're watching over us. Into that. We're gonna get just our plugs out of the way quickly. You can follow us mostly on Blue Sky at Ion Canon. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, sort of. But yeah, mostly Blue Sky, Ion Canon, primarily. Joel, you keep that up pretty well. If audio is more your speed, those you can feel like prefer to listen, especially if you're driving or walking or what have you. Right after we're done recording, I will pop this guy up onto Spotify and Apple Podcasts for your listening pleasure. So please feel free to check that out. Search for Ion Canon Podcast, not Ion Canon. That was the old stream, Ion Canon Podcast. So please do check that out. We are proudly part of the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network. And here on the YouTube channel, we have memberships. You can actually support us financially, as per Joel's joke a little bit, but you can support us financially. We have YouTube memberships. We have super chats. Please do chat. Please do support. If you comment, we'll get to the comment as best we can, as soon as we can. If you super chat us, we'll get it right away as best we can, but right away. Also, speaking of Star Wars Underworld, going quickly here, the Discord server, you can get the link in the description below. Some great discussions on the Discord server. Certainly going to be discussions about Andor spoiler chat. I don't know if there's too much discussion about Mask of Fear, but yeah, there's a little bit. We'll definitely can get into that as well if we want. Then Marvel, Star Trek, all the fun stuff, but also events, game nights, movie nights. Joel, what's in the hopper coming up?
This week we're having a movie night, and am I good?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
This week we're having a movie night. And we are going to be doing a special two-part episode of Rebels in the Name of the Rebellion from season 4. We thought we'd kind of get our Andor on first with some non-Andor adjacent stuff, and then we'll probably move into some Andor stuff later.
There we go. That's great timing. Great timing because there's the this YouTube thing happening on Thursday, and then this Andor show that's coming out. They've done a great job tying that in and hyping that up. So yeah, we'll do we'll do the eyes on screen, usual eyes on screen, but definitely check out the flagship on Thursday nights. I'm not too sure what they're going to do, but yeah, definitely check us out here on the Underworld Network. Last but not least, another show on the Star Wars Underworld Network that will not really touch on Andor too much, but Tractor Beam Comics Reviews every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Underworld YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitch and Ion Canon Twitch. Chris Abbott and I will review the comics, or in this case, comic that comes out this week. This week it is, of course, Legacy of Vader #2 by Charles Soule. And so Joel, our resident sequelist, will be joining us for that Kylo Ren, Anakin Skywalker beautiful discussion that bridges the prequels and the sequels. This issue is going to be fantastic. I haven't read it yet, but looking forward to it. So yes, join us 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Wednesday night. All right, that does it for the plugs. We got a bit of a special. Instead of this week in Star Wars, we're doing next week in Star Wars, or next weekend, and then next month in Star Wars. So first off, Toronto Comic-Con is coming up right around the corner just this coming weekend. I'll get this up there. So it's the little con that could. I've been spending my heart for it. I'm wearing a t-shirt. You can't really see it. This Toronto Comic-Con t-shirt. The little sibling of Fan Expo Canada, of course, but I have a special place in my heart. It was kind of the first one I went to, and so yeah, we're looking forward to that. Manny Jacinto is going to be there. Vancouver's Manny Jacinto, I should say. Roger Christian, he is I think a visual in Star Wars. So Manny Jacinto, of course, from The Acolyte and The Good Place, among others. So do that. And also, Ash, are you going to be there?
Oh, yeah. So she.
Mini One's going to be there. Ash and I we're back at it with our third Taylor Swift panel. That is Saturday at 12:15 in room 203D, I believe. I think that's right. So, yeah, check that out. We're going to talk about Taylor Swift on screen, all her film roles, definitely, and her music videos and different.
I just rewatched Hannah Montana the movie today.
There we go. You're just diving in. You watched the Lorax.
I'm watching the Lorax after this, and then yesterday I watched Miss Americana and The Giver, which I had never seen before.
Nice.
And I cried my way through Miss Americana again. So.
There we go. You're doing more work than I am. I'm just prepping notes. There we go. I watched her SNL sketches. There we go. Anyways, please do come and see us if you are at Toronto Comic-Con. Please do come and see us there as well. There's another convention happening in April next month, and that is called, of course, Star Wars Celebration Japan Pacific Coast Party, except that the Pacific is the East Coast. And both Ellie and Ash, you guys both have panels, I believe. So. Ellie, first off, take it away. If there's anything with Celebration you want to plug.
Oh God. Myself and my co-host Sophie will be there. We're hosting a panel on the 20th on Sunday, in the morning-ish. That is with author of behind me. Nope, it's fallen down. The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, Chris Kempshall, where we're talking about kind of the process of writing history and what that looks like kind of in setting for Star Wars. Some like Rise and Fall specific stuff, some more broad takes on the topic, and it's going to be a good time. Something real new, something real, I think, special for the show. So
nice. That's fantastic. That's great to hear.
I will be there.
You'll be at that panel.
I hope so.
I wish I was there.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Sounds great.
You will be missed.
And Ash, you're gonna yap. What are you yapping about?
Yeah. So I have a panel. It's on Friday the 18th of April, obviously. From 4 to 5 on the fan stage, and it's called Senator Rebel Chancellor, who is Mon Mothma, and essentially it is a very watered down, reduced look at who Mon Mothma is throughout the canon storyline and what the key stories for her character are and what those stories mean for her as a character. And I have also kind of low-key been pressured into adding a Mon Mothma serving looks section to this presentation, which is going to be very fun because that's going to be very Andor centric. And I'm going to have bracelets and stickers to give out. And then I have nothing to do with it, but I will be at the Andor panel, or I will just have passed away. So there's two things. If they don't let me into that Andor panel, I will pass away. That is it. It'll be over for me.
You will survive.
I need to be there.
Yeah, that's right.
I need to be there.
Do you by any chance like Mon Mothma?
Who's Mon Mothma?
There we go.
Well,
all right,
everyone.
There we go. So yeah,
and that is Ash's impression of someone who doesn't know Star Wars.
There we go. So yeah, please do check that out if you guys are at Star Wars Celebration. I can definitely do that. Yeah, we'll definitely give social media plugs at the end as well. So if you can get in contact and find out more info about those panels, both of them sound fantastic. I wish I could be at both of them. Hopefully I don't know if there's any chance of recording or anything, but we'll see. Okay.
I mean, that's my plan. We'll see if the AV situation works out. If it's not, Chris and I and Sophie it's gonna be recorded in some fashion eventually.
Okay. Sorry, I know Ellie, I put you on the spot about that, but
no, it's fine.
Mine will be recorded and then posted to my YouTube channel, which I will plug at the end.
Sweet.
We'll worry about that later.
Sounds good. All right. I think we got a lot of a big chunky book to dive into, so I think we're going to do that. But yeah, again, please do let us know, chime in, ask us for info, or ask our guests for info about the celebration panels and Toronto Comic Con. Come say hi. But with that, let's dive in to the Mask of Fear.
Yes, let us dive in to the Mask of Fear. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think the best way to begin this is by just a few lines of the book. In order to ensure the security and continuing stability, the Republic will be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire for a safe and secure society.
Also filmed by George Lucas. But
yes, Mask of Fear. Oh man, what a book! What a book! This book has been one that we've been waiting for quite some time. The book that both merges our love of Andor, Revenge of the Sith, the end of the Clone Wars, all of it into one just glorious book. I'm already giving my thoughts already.
Yeah.
So
I already did the top. So.
I'm gonna just do round robin and get our just overall thoughts of the book before we really dive into it. So, Ellie, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Just what are your just overall thoughts on this book so far? Or as if you read it.
Pretty good book. Solid entry. I'm a known enjoyer of the work that Alexander Freed has done in Star Wars. Alphabet Squadron is like the one Star Wars book that I've reread, which is when you're chewing through so many of these, actually taking the time to reread them, I think is pretty notable. But yeah, I mean, it had I think it was focused in a way that a lot of Star Wars books kind of aren't allowed to be. It knows what it wants to be tonally. It's paced really well. The climax of the book itself is voting. It's a senatorial vote, which is, I think, probably unheard of up till now. Good book. Slow book. I don't know if it's for everybody, but it was what I wanted it to be. It was well worth reading. I will cards on the table. I've only just started processing my thoughts on the end of it because I didn't finish it until yesterday.
Well,
which is,
don't worry, Matthew might be probably
Yeah, I finished it yesterday too. It's okay.
Okay. Well, see, Matthew, you have the excuse. I have the janky ass pre-release version.
Yeah, we all do.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Why
I
didn't you finish it until yesterday? I have an excuse.
Oh, do you
I'm
guys
slow.
want to know the
It's
funny
okay.
part? Want to know the funny part? I don't have the pre-order. I got this
not?
on the day of, and I finished like a week before you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
I
finished
read
early.
it 3 times before it came out.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Okay, so
Ash
it's
is
Ash,
making up for
me,
both of
and then the
us.
2 of you guys are
Yeah.
tied.
We're tied, Ali. That's all right.
Matthew lovingly,
Yes.
because I was almost last minute unable to go to New York Comic Con, and I was really upset about it. And then Matthew blessed me because he's a wonderful, darling friend, and
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I get
Impressive.
stuck with nothing.
Good pull
Yeah.
through. No, I
Yeah.
only have this because of the Honorable Veer's watch.
Oh, if you're
Sent
Oh,
me
nice.
his.
Nice.
So
Oh, nice. Thank you,
Yeah,
viewers.
he was
Watch.
like, "This is your deal." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I know that. I know that already."
Yeah.
But
So there you go.
I probably should have finished it sooner. But
No, that's fun.
So should I.
I would have more collected thoughts on it if I had.
the last chapter is literally traumatizing to me as an individual on so many levels.
We'll get
I
to
was
it.
like, oh my gosh, you know, it could be great. And then Alexander Fried was like, haha, gunshot. And I was like,
Yep.
We'll get to it. Matthew, I mean, you kind of already given your thoughts, but I'm going to ask you a little bit of a different question.
Sure.
So what are your overall thoughts on the book, especially as a book for the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith, your favorite Star Wars?
It was a dream time, and really, yeah. I mean, it is to Revenge of the Sith what Aftermath is maybe to Return of the Jedi. Is to the prequel. I mean, it is almost to the prequel trilogy what Darth Plagueis is to the prequel trilogy, just at the other end. And so, I mean, just thinking there, how Darth Plagueis had such an important role in my prequelist conversion. That, yeah, right in the Empire, it really cementing again what the story that George Lucas is telling with this film. Everything. Oh gosh, everything with Padme, about Padme in this. Everything with Bail about the Jedi. Right, that the reverberations that carry through the clones. I mean, that's also part of Clone Wars, but the clones as these faceless, evil machines. And that's also part of it from Attack of the Clones as well. But yeah, it was. It really honored everything, kind of the political story behind it, the deleted scenes, of course, but the terror that we feel. This is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause, and here we have the aftermath of the death of liberty in this novel. So really brilliant, perfectly timed to celebrate. I would call it the greatest film of all time. I know not everyone agrees with that, but definitely my favorite. So definitely
if I ever got a chance to interview Alexander Fried, my big question to him would be, are you a fan of the Revenge of the Sith novelization? Because I feel like I would reading a continuation of the Revenge of the Sith novelization. And the only other book I can think of where I have that situation is James Luceno's Dark Lord, Rise of Darth Vader, where it's another day one after Revenge of the Sith from Darth Vader's perspective.
James Luceno. Yeah.
Yep. So definitely that. Okay. Let's ask Ash. Ash, what do you think about this book? You seem to be enjoying yourself.
I have a different way of it into it.
Okay.
Well, how did you feel after the first reading? How did you feel after the second reading? How did you feel after the third reading?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
What about the fourth? Because the fourth was the audio book.
Okay. How'd you feel then after the fourth? So you've actually gone through this 4 times. Sorry.
The first reading, essentially, most of it was like, again, Mon Mothma was consuming my thoughts because there was just so much character building for her in this book that it was difficult to process anything else for me, because I wake up and I get out of bed every morning for Mon Mothma. And then the second reading, I actually was able to get to know more of the newer characters. And it was really, I think, the second time reading it that I fully understood the character of Lud Maroi, who is my favorite new character in this book. I don't know. I keep each reading from the second reading onwards, I've pictured a different hot male celebrity as him, and now it's Jonathan Bailey. and you know, I came to love so much more of the story, and you know, I also love Bail Organa. True.
Yes, Chris, it's fact.
I also really love Bail Organa. I really love Saw Gerrera. I love that, like, you could still feel Padme's impact and you could feel the lack of Padme's presence, especially when it came to Mon and Bail not seeing on the same, like, at the same level. And it's not just because he's taller than her. I wanted to put out that joke. I wanted to feel like Mon's a little itty bitty. And then the third reading was, I think, the most intense one for me, because I was like, this is the reading that I'm really using for my review, which turned into a review / unhinged analysis, which ended up being 10 pages long. And about half of that is Mon Mothma centric. And then with the audiobook listening, I mostly wanted to make sure I was pronouncing the characters' names correctly, because I was like, there's so many new characters, and I don't like mispronouncing characters' names if I can help it. Yeah, but it's such a brilliant book, and it felt super validating in parts, but also really intense. It is the year of Mon Mothma, and she's not catching a break. Not here, not in Andor, not in the next 2 books in this trilogy. When will she get a break? Please.
Never. I was gonna say at Endor, but they're like, nope, she gotta build a new republic after that. It's like, nope.
Which is even more traumatizing for her, because they're trying to blow her up.
She can't even enjoy Palpatine getting blown up for like 2 seconds.
She can't even enjoy like leaving the Senate, because she only leaves because she gets sick, and they're all like, when are you coming back? And it's like, leave her alone.
Well, she gets sick because she's completely burnt out. I mean, clearly.
Yeah.
But yes. So yeah, those are our overall thoughts of the book. Now let's do a deep dive into it. So I'm gonna turn back to you, Ellie. What did you think about how the book portrays essentially Empire Day 1, the new administration, as they call it? How did you feel about how the characters reacted, how the galaxy's reacting? How would you feel the book handled that?
I appreciated how, I think dour is the wrong word, but there is an intensity to it. As you know, they're moving out of this period of out and out war to something much quieter and more strange. You know, this is not a book that is super concerned with, you know, good guy teams and bad guy teams. There are people who are, I think, working towards good things, and there are people who are less so. But because there is such nuance in characters that we might root for, you know, like Ash said, Bail and Mon really do not agree. They have like not just different approaches, but they are actively not friends with one another during the course of this book, and kind of feeling the effects of that. And then you have someone like Saw, who's doing work with people who are ideologically different than him, and I think because of that, you really feel the ways in which, you know, now the galaxy, you know, at least as much of the galaxy that is under the banner of this one empire. The kind of the tone of conflict, the tone of dissent is always marked by that totalizing presence. And I think that is, you know, it's a big difference watching these characters who are, you know, already so used to this, like, here is the CIS, here is the Republic, here is the like interplay between those. Now everything is Empire. It is neither of those things. It's very different, and it I mean, obviously it's the main like setting of the book, but it affects, I would say, every character constantly. And I do think that is appropriate. It never goes away.
You brought up the tone. and this is one of those weird things, one of those juxtaposition things, reading a book like this, where it's like, it's so real and tone, and you actually think back, and they talk about the Clone Wars, like this big traumatic event for the galaxy, which it was. And it's kind of one of those weird juxtaposition things where it's like, they're talking about this, and it's like, I still can't help but think of the Clone Wars episodes where every episode just feels like Count Dooku is like, General Grievous, today we shall unleash the evil Jedi weapon of doom. Yes, we shall unleash the weapon of doom. And then it's sort of like, oh, man, actually here's a realistic tone. And the Separatists are like, it's very complicated, and the galaxy's very complicated. And, again, there aren't, the good and bad aren't really there, and Mon and Bail aren't even allies yet. Like, they're the dynamic duo almost. You're so used to that. Matthew, I'll turn this to you. And what do you think about that? What do you think about Mon and Bail's relationship? And especially as I talk to you off screen, Mon and Bail's relationship in terms of like, Mon kind of sees the Emperor as he's just a corrupt politician. He's got all these evil, bad advisors. Well, Bail's like, no, he's a freaking Sith Lord who shoots lightning out of his hands and cackles and does evil magic stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of, and Ash and I were joking off screen too. It just leads Mon and Bail into different directions, different paths. I mean, it underscores in part why Mon believes that using the instruments of that came from a democracy, at least the instruments of the Senate, to maybe have a chance at curtailing Palpatine's power. Why she thinks that's still possible, whereas Bail is no. Like you said, we know his motivations. We know like he has a sense of the tradition that he comes from, because Bail, and this is what one of the things I love so much about this book, Bail's deep respect for the Jedi, and his real, not just respect, but and it's personal for him, right? He knew Anakin, he knew Yoda, he knew Obi-Wan, he knows Obi-Wan, he knows Yoda. They're still alive, but that's, you talk about the legacy of Revenge of the Sith, right? How I just think of on the Tent of Three with Yoda and Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Bail there, and so I'm going to take Leia and go, and in this context, in this circumstance. And so really it kind of underscores that. It underscores their different missions that they're trying to accomplish. Why, again, Mon is trying to get this act passed, whereas Bail is saying, oddly enough, still wants to use the levers, the judicial levers, if they're still also functioning, of saying, well, this thing was forged. There was this myth against the Jedi that was propagated by Palpatine. But even then, it's that's the thing is and they kind of come together. I mean, at the end, they come together in their respect for what each other's trying to do. They come together in the well, first of all, like you guys mentioned, in their love for Padme, because Padme, as we've mentioned, is talked about plenty of times before, she's the one that could bring them together and hold them together and get them to agree and work together. She actually, was the leader of the group in a tremendous way, even though she was younger, and Mon was kind of she was kind of Mon's protege a little bit. But they also then in the end come together and work together because of the looming sense that both of their tracks are futile. I think they're fighting uphill, fighting against the grain. In part, we know why, and Bail knows why. But like you're saying, with the all-consuming power of the Empire, Mon has that sense, and that's then she gets something of it revealed to her by Masamita at the end. So it's interesting, this divergence, but a bit of a convergence that we know, again, with Rogue One and the Rebel Alliance and everything will eventually happen.
Agreed. Ash, what was it like, as the Mon expert, the Mon professor, what was it like, kind of seeing the early days of Bail and Mon's, I guess, alliance, even though it's not much of an alliance in this book, especially as you study Mon and kind of know a lot of the backstory even within the novels and stuff like that. We're so used to, like, it was the Trandrillian and the Autoradians and the Corellians, and they got together and they formed a rebellion, happy ever after. Then Bale exploded. What was it like kind of seeing more of a more complicated relationship between the two of them? That, like they weren't buddies at the beginning. They kind of were butting heads, and Padme was kind of the glue that kept them together during those early years. What was that like?
I think it really made a lot of sense to me because, like, in previous things, like before Padme was part of the picture in E.K. Johnston's Padme trilogy, we saw that Mon and Bale worked together, but there was some differences. There was like between them that they couldn't quite manage to sort out, even though they were very much allies and were able to work together. But then Padme comes into the picture. The three of them work together throughout the Clone Wars. Mon and Bale are also very different people. And Padme is able to bridge, all of Bale's little Jedi mind trick level charisma and Mon's ability with policy making and knowing all of the inner workings of government. She is their balance between that because she has both of those things. And I think it makes a lot of sense that when you are so closely united with like another person, when you lose that person, you lose your links to other people as well. And with that, I also think we can tell very much that the two of them were treated differently during their imprisonment following the declaration of the Empire, right? If you want, I can go into the ways that men and women are treated very differently in the imperial prison system, but maybe that's a topic for another day because that goes a lot into Andor and Rogue One and the way that under fascism men are treated better and then everybody else gets, like, anybody that's the other, right? So in the case of Star Wars, women, aliens, like non-humans are all treated incredibly differently and much worse. And Mon and Bale are also kind of in this book for a while not seeming to understand that both of them are right, but both of them aren't completely right because they're holding each other accountable for things that they don't know. Mon is upset with Bale because he doesn't know what happened to her in that little coffin cell. True. And Bale is like, she doesn't get it. She doesn't know the Jedi like I do. She acknowledges that. But that's where they're not seeing eye to eye until, both of them come out of the Security Bureau in like chapter, oh my God, it's like chapter 40 something, I think. After Bale has returned to Coruscant, been held captive by Soujen, and ultimately gets brought in to the Security Bureau. And Mon gets dragged into the Security Bureau, gets questioned about Bale, about
multiple times. Poor Mon.
Poor Mon. And she turns around and she's like, all right, you know what? Here it is. I'm having an affair. And that bit, I cracked up because it's my favorite Mon Mothma bit when it's like, how are you going to get the Empire off your back? She's like, I'm going to fake an affair because it's happened multiple times and I need it to actually happen in Andor season 2 because I feel like we're on the brink of it with Tay.
Fair enough.
It happened in Leia, Princess of Alderaan.
Now just imagine how Tarkin felt sitting at that table on Alderaan with the royal family, with Mon, and Mon, lays the whole "I'm having an affair" excuse, and he's like, again? This woman.
I didn't even think of that.
Oh gosh.
True.
It's
Tarkin
true.
would say that.
It's true because that would have probably been the third time that he has heard this information about her, and he's just like, has she ever slept with her husband? Which chapter 72 of this book,
at least once.
Yeah.
Traumatizing.
So I guess I'll ask you this, Ash. I'm sure, being #1 Mon fan, I'm sure you love Perrin. Oh, I bet you do. But no, I guess I'll ask you this: what did you actually make of Perrin in this story? I mean, I'll say this: I thought of like, I can see where he goes, but it's like he is kind of different here. So it's like
Mhm.
I found that kind of interesting. But what you make of kind of that part of the relationship with Mon and Perrin
I
earlier?
think the fundamentals of Perrin remain the same.
Mhm.
He is just a guy, and he's just a
dude.
guy from start to finish. And while in the interim from season 1 of Andor to The Mask of Fear, like my first read of The Mask of Fear, my feelings for Perrin became more complex than just blind hatred. And I was like, the second I found out this book was coming, I was like, Perrin is going to be in it. And I had to acknowledge that to myself. But I was like, wait a minute, this is going to be prior to the birth of Leda. This is going to be prior to, you know, the ramping up of Mon's anti-imperial activity. Like, this is very close to Revenge of the Sith,
Mhm.
right? This is Perrin coming out of the Clone Wars. Like, how is he going to be different?
Mhm.
And this book did a really great job of challenging those feelings, because
Mhm.
I don't want to just blindly hate him. I want to have reasons to back it up. And there are things about him that I realize. I'm like, I can't just turn around and be like, oh, well, I mean, Mon didn't choose to be married to him. He didn't choose to be married to her. I would have been absolutely fine being married off to Mon Mothma. But, like, they have these similarities where
Mhm.
they've been through the same things for almost half of their lives. It's presumed that they grew up together and were fairly close, and that
Mhm.
Tay was somehow part of that. And I think Tay got a little bit of an indirect mention when Mon was thinking about classmates that she only sees a couple times a year, and I was like, Tay mentioned, nice. But I liked Perrin in this book to a degree, but I could still see, like, oh, I see exactly how you become that guy in Andor, right?
Yeah.
Because if I found out that my wife was being held by the security bureau, the last thing I would be doing is sleeping or drinking. I'd be going and I'd be throwing bricks at the security bureau building. Like, I literally, this is going to sound crazy. I, for reasons of my own, had this tally of how many times Perrin's drinking or gambling is referenced. And the number is 5. There are also exactly 5 references to Mon Mothma eating food in this book, which causation is not correlation, but it's revolting that the number is the same.
That's fine.
And I'm like, he drinks
Alexander.
as much as she eats, which either means she does not eat enough or he drinks way too much.
Yeah.
Multiple
And we
things
see
can be
him
true at
less.
once.
It's true.
We see, exactly. We see less of him in this book. But I do think that exploring those inner feelings that Mon was having, especially when we get to the complexities where we add Ludmilla Roy into the situation, because it was just feeling very like, yeah, he's hot, but I'm married. But he's really hot though. And the fact that it was like the lie felt too close to the truth.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
Girl, what have you been thinking about this hot senator man who is like his politics are dubious at best. Like,
but he's very kind and supportive and understands the common endeavor of being a senator. You know, they have that in common.
And
I will say Perrin is also very supportive in this, even though he's sleeping half the time. When he's awake and sober.
When he's awake
supportive.
and sober, which is very rare.
Which is half the time.
But also, like, I love how Ludmilla Roy is able to save her life, which ultimately ends poor Zuna's life. Rest in pieces, girl. I loved you for the short time I had you.
I know.
And then, because Lud is the one that gets her invited to that gala, which gets her out of the house, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And,
and
I was like, oh my god, he saved her life.
You're right. What did he know? What did he know?
I don't know. Maybe it's another napkin bombing situation from Bloodline that we're never going to find out the truth about.
Nah,
which works because this is very Ransom and Leia coded. So
Sure.
I got a question before
Yeah.
about the gala. Did anybody listen to the audiobook for any chance?
I've been listening
Smashed it.
to it.
Okay.
I've not completely finished it at a normal speed.
Okay, well,
Okay.
I'm going to spoil just a little bit of the audiobook. When you get to the gala, the governor guy who's talking, the audio, they give him like a southern Texas
Oh, yeah.
accent. You know,
Oh,
he
I
talks
read
about Palpatine and those ideas. Palpatine likes his ideas. Like
So-
it's on the cuff and thick. It's great.
So this gets me to thinking, the question you were asking a bit ago about Empire Day 1.
Right.
So this gets me into the real world connections here. I got it in October, but I only started reading it kind of January. And January 20th comes around. And I'm reading this thing. And I'm reading it and reading the part where Mon is wrestling with the fact that she's depended on rule of law and fair trials and needing to have warrants, and how the kind of this undertone, and she goes into it a lot later in the novel, but even early on, reflecting on her arrest and on the fact that it could happen again. The feeling of, okay, these democratic norms that we just assume, what is it like for those to be taken away? What is it like for those to have them and then to start to lose them? And Ash, you and I are in a country that, thankfully we haven't lost them as much, but it was stressful. It was stressful to read that, knowing that there's a country right next to us that Joel and Ellie, you guys are in, that, just today we saw about the guy got disappeared, things, ICE and all their raids, right? So, again, what do we do about that? But the fact that this is coming out this year, this novel came out this year, I'm guessing it was probably in some sort of development during the first Trump administration. Just the kind of the spark of saying we want to do something with this, or Alexander Freed saying I want to do something about this, coming out this year. Of course, I got it before he was elected, but also Andor coming out this year. Again,
That's another coincidence.
It's another coincidence, but again, an opportunity for this book, and in the next two books in the series, and or having an opportunity to have a moment of speaking to the situation, speaking to the times, and hopefully even in this weird way of saying, the way you see our sense of dread and foreboding and stress in the real world reflected by others, and say, I see this too, the sense of that we're in this together, even across borders, we're in this together. Hopefully there's some sort of kind of sense of comfort. I mean, that's kind of what George Lucas was trying to do, and saying with Return of the Jedi, these empires fall. Here we have them start, and it was like, okay, got the newspaper in one hand and this novel in the other. It was interesting.
I couldn't help a little bit but feel like the whole Bail Organa Jedi thing was the equivalent of the Mueller report, where it's like, I just got to get him on the Jedi thing and work out.
Yeah.
I probably really kind of does agree with Mon Mothma a little bit, that I think even if he did, I don't think people would care. That's my sad take on.
No, I fully agree.
Okay, right. Okay, good. I'm not the only one. Oh, speaking of that, Ellie, I'll cast this to you. What did you make of Mon and Bale's kind of plans? Obviously, I felt they were a little both naive, but at the same time, it's like I kind of can forgive him a little bit for maybe not understanding, at least on day one. But what did you make of kind of their two-track approach here?
I think there's some important things to remember with regard to the way they behave in this book. The first thing is that I have seen Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope,
right,
at all. And I know kind of where things are heading. I watched Andor a dozen times. I have this basis of where these characters are heading, and they simply don't. Right? They don't know what's coming in the future. They don't know what kind of regime the Empire even is. Right. And I think that's important. But at the same time, this is a book that in many ways I think by the end, you know, as essentially shown in the climax and denouement, is essentially asking the question, what is the place of the capital P political, you know, in under a profoundly supremacist and undemocratic government. And you know, I have respect for the effort that Mon made in her coalition building, and I see why Bail would be chasing after the Jedi thing, and why he kind of can't let go of that, because he saw fucking Zet Jukasa gunned down in front of him. Like that, you know, Mon and Bail have been traumatized in previous weeks by two very different things. And I think, you know, in some ways this is a book that deals with their responses to that. But ultimately, by the end of the book, the act passes, you know, it passes the Senate, and then Mon is taken for a one-on-one meeting with Mas Amedda, who very nearly says the quiet part loud. He says, we're not going to let that happen. It was cute that we knew you were doing something. We didn't know what. Good job. Well played. You can keep kind of doing this stuff. You can be a pain tomorrow, but we're focused on the next 100 years, and you're not going to get in the way of that. And she says that plain. And I don't know. I see that as very much the answer to the question. What is the place of the work that Mon Mothma and Bail, what is the place of the work that they're doing? Well, I mean, I think it's valuable. I think they realize that they need to change the direction that work is headed in by the end of the book. But that scene says it doesn't do anything. This is a broken system. You cannot fix it from within, at least not like that. And Sauce says it, and the narrative in that regard agrees with him.
Right. You know, I'll just say kind of two things. One, for like a millisecond, I almost thought Mon was going to be Palpatine face to face for like a hot second there. But then I realized with Mas Amedda, it's like, okay, makes more sense. I don't think Palpatine cares at all. But
I read Red Robes, and I saw in my mind the sheave puffy sleeve robe thing.
I love
way.
And also during that scene, like, you know, because I'm me, you know, when he talked about the Century Plan, he's talking about like political camps and all these other horrible stuff. Like my brain just almost wants him to say, and you know, the Emperor is working on his immortality project. He's got his clones up and running. He's going to be alive forever. You know,
that's implied.
It also implied the stormtroopers are implied too. We talked about the volunteer thing. Oh, and Ash, I caught it that Mon Mothma should administrate. And I saw that line. I was thinking, oh, I bet Mon had a joy in Aftermath during that. I bet he was thinking about that moment in Aftermath.
Oh yeah.
When the tables have turned, and now it's Saint Pistage. I mean, not Saint Pistage, Mas Amedda on his knees, like going, please surrender.
And she's just like, I mean, you're administrator, so I don't know. It's great. I'm just looking at my reading log, and the first reading that I had of this book was the only peaceful one I will ever know, because I finished it on the 2nd of November, 2024.
Right. Wow.
Back when I still had hope for my lovely friends down in America. And 4 days later, when that hope was torn from me, I was having a very difficult time coping with that. And instead of rereading The Mask of Fear, I rewatched Andor several times. How many times have I rewatched?
Get closer to the end of Empire.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I want to jump in there because I mean, actually make an interesting point in terms of, and Ella, picking up the question about the role of the political. You know, it's interesting. You went to Andor, right? The turn to radicalism, and I think about that moment in Rebels where Mon resigns her seat, and and says, okay,
which we might see again real soon.
Yeah, well, I mean, those are the episodes in the Discord party, right?
Yeah. No,
Oh,
later.
no, that's when we might see it in live action
Nate.
version of that. Yeah.
Mhm.
In like the Gorman Massacre, or who knows, or what have you. You know, like kind of to get your question. Yeah, everything they can do these small little administrative, legislative actions here and there. Even reading a book at this point, it's all about having that moment in view, having that turn to say, no, we have to secede, we have to break away and form this rebel alliance, and form this military. I mean, even Jin and Cassian taking the U-wing and saying, no, we're going, forget it, and then Mon kind of smiling, saying, oh, it's time. That movement, which I mean, that's kind of where, I mean, we're hoping and praying it never gets to that point in the real world. It's this funny kind of thing of it's this cautionary tale, this warning of, okay, let's put the brakes on this earlier so it doesn't get that point. But like you said, we've seen Rogue One, we've seen A New Hope. Everything is still moving in that direction, and so, I mean, I think maybe that's what this trilogy is doing overall for Mon, is convincing her, partly through her arrests, partly through, that sense of futility, and building in that sense of futility about about that they got these 100-year plan, 1,000-year plan. Okay,
And
well,
Palpatine can see it through if he gets lucky.
and Palpatine can see it through, and so almost to say, I mean, we have the movement, that moment in Rogue One where Mon then says, okay, the Jedi, the only folks who can really gather the rest of the galaxy to confront the Sith are the Jedi, and of course, then Mon turns to Bail to say, okay, what about Obi-Wan? Right. Not to say that was the only key, but of course, Obi-Wan equals Luke equals the saga. So yeah, it's interesting thing of saying we have the political. I think Bail is going to be this reminder to Mon that there's more than, in Star Wars. There's more than just the political. There's the spiritual that can move the tide. It's moved the tide into darkness. It can move the tide back into light.
Yeah. Anyone want to respond to that before I move on?
Go on, Ellie.
I do want to say, I think there is, I would say the unfortunate thing about this book is that kind of unavoidably, and I'm sure it was finished a year ago, if not more, unavoidably, I think there are ways in which it is inadequate as any kind of allegory, or even in its applicability. It's very difficult to be reading the book, a week after the most recent United States inauguration, but as I was, but I don't know. It's, Andor is riffing on imagery and understandings of political overreach that are built on, I mean, there's the real classic, like, Star Warsy stuff. There's like the real baseline, the way we understand like political repression here in the Americas is often very like Soviet Union. There's all of that kind of stuff.
Off to Gulag.
Yeah, but then there's this right. We have the ISB as this huge part of Andor, but then very much the direct, contemporary political allegory in Andor is several years old at this point. And it was, kind of getting on in age, but at this point, the ways in which, I cannot help but read a book like this and think about the current plight of the people living in my country, and most particularly, people who are most disenfranchised, people who are specifically targeted. Me and every other one of my loved ones are legislated out of existence, essentially. And the ways in which the government is being dismantled are very particular to the sort of oligarchy based on decades of people getting rich off of speculative assets. Like, all of these things, I think, are so very unknown to the political landscape of the world, to our media, to all of these things. And I really liked Mask of Fear, but I'm reading it in a time where it kind of can't help but be inadequate.
Fair. That is very fair. To move on from
maybe just a question, like, as in inadequate, just help me understand. Inadequate in the sense of it's more surface level, or it goes into this mythological rebellion story?
I think part of it is that it's doing Star Wars. We're doing Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars has its limits, and it has, this is what this is heading towards. And, there's always going to be a degree that you can project onto that. And,
Sure.
always going to be other things that are like, that's Star Wars specific. Like you said, Joel, Century Plan is literal for Palpatine. And Mas Amedda knows that.
True.
Even if Mon doesn't. But also I think we are in a period that is, as the saying goes, unprecedented, and I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what political resistance, the useful kind of political resistance, is going to look like in the next few years, because it will be different. Mark my words, there will be different manners of organizing and of fighting back, and I have no idea what those are even going to be at this point. I wish I did. And this is a book that says, well, you probably shouldn't do the Saw Gerrera stuff, but it's also kind of pointless. It's not pointless, but ultimately, the Master's tools will never dismantle the Master's house. And then it kind of says, okay, do Star Wars now. And
yeah,
I
don't have an X-Wing,
That's true.
Not yet. I'm working on
I have one on my leg, but I don't know how helpful that's going to be.
Kick someone with
probably
a
harder to fly and gun down the space station.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
But no, I totally get that. I mean,
Yeah.
you talked about it before. Like, one of my whole big things about politics and Star Wars is, just because you watch Star Wars doesn't mean you have a political science degree.
Yeah.
I have a political science degree because I went to college. But I didn't watch Star Wars because of it. Oh, fair enough. Still, I go outside of my Star Wars bubble to know about the more complicated thing. I mean, we talked about this last week, Matthew, with our Golden Age and Dark Age,
True.
right? Star Wars
they
is
don't exist
literal.
in the real, yeah.
In the real world, a bit more complicated.
Yeah.
The
High Republic is a literal golden age.
Exactly. But of course, you mentioned the one and only Saw Gerrera. But before we get to him, I kind of want to talk about the character who we see him through the eyes of, and that is it Soujen or Soujen? I always get confused.
It's Soujen.
Soujen. Okay.
Soujen. I'm going to just say it. I think Soujen is my favorite character of this book. Because here's the thing. I love it when the Separatists aren't just the bad guys. That's because I watch a lot of Clone Wars, and so often they're just the bad guys. It's General Grievous and his latest evil scheme with his Jedi killer of doom. Or Count Dooku with his latest scheme of doom. Yeah, you get your Nina Von Terry's episode, and those are great. I love that. But it's like, hey, here, we talked about this, Matthew, on the podcast several times.
Yeah.
Here's a Separatist. And, the Separatists have probably some legitimate grievances, some general grievances. I gotta make that joke every time. To separate from the Republic, because the Republic's not taking care of them. But unfortunately, the leaders of the Separatists are Count Dooku, Grievous, Ventress, and Newt Gunray and his cronies. So, it's the tragedy of the Separatist. And it's kind of cool to see, like, hey, here's a Separatist who isn't just mwahaha evil. He has kind of more clarity of like what the separatist is. He knows it's not perfect and it's got corporate sponsors, which is both terrifying and kind of funny. I can't help but laugh. The separatist, brought to you by the Trade Federation. And kind of getting in his head, it's like, why did he do this? Why did he augment himself? Why is he this separatist contingency? Which is the only part of the book I questioned a little bit. Like, why do the separatists have a contingency? Didn't Dooku know they were going to lose? But outside of that, it's really cool to see him and kind of his point of view, and just kind of see that side of the separatists we don't see often. The Count Dooku was a visionary. Not Count Dooku was an evil Sith Lord with a red lightsaber. But Matthew, what do you think of Soujen and seeing that side of the separatist?
Well, first of all, I think the contingency thing, the best thing I can think of is it would have been suspicious if they didn't have one. And so they say, okay, let's have one. Just for the sake of having one. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, the separatists have literal investors. They got to feel like there's something left for them after this war, right?
I guess that's true. I guess Dooku gotta be like, well, me and the master will think of something else later.
You gotta make sure the credit is solid. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and not just for outside perspectives, I think, but also for the people who genuinely believed in the cause, right? Because a lot of I personally have never really thought of the separatists as a whole as being evil. And one of the most important Clone Wars stories that I'm going to point to, even though it's part of a very specific 9% of Clone Wars episodes, and I won't get into that, heroes on both sides. Because, and Mina Bonteri is just so important for that. And I really think that characters like her are super important to telling these stories, that it's just like, some people who were separatists just really didn't feel like they were being heard in the Republic, and it's okay for them to leave. The separatist the war started because Palpatine wanted there to be a war. He couldn't be like, okay, well, yes, you can leave. Right?
Yeah.
Let them go.
All right. Yeah.
They weren't feeling heard. Let them go. If you weren't going to listen to them, let them go. And now he's essentially forcing them to come back because he knows that they would be too powerful, and they would be a very strong ally for anyone who wanted to stand against the Empire.
Yeah. And one of the things we get with Soujen, especially and with his people, is a great example of things, the way that the Republic had let different groups, different people down across the galaxy, right? They have this genetic disorder, I think, that they're promised that they need help, they're going to go extinct, and the Republic says, yeah, we're going to help you, and they never help them. I mean, that's the thing. Palpatine, kicking making the final nail in the coffin for these kinds of grievances, but the periphery center tension had been going on. I mean, I think that's part of what's happening with the Nile, frankly, is making or playing up the periphery center tension. Here we have the separatists, it being boiling over into a full-blown schism, full-blown secession, to say we're going to form our own parliament and deal with things ourselves. And just an example of just how on the ground and personal and tangible these problems were. And just I mean, that's the thing with Palpatine taking his moment. That's kind of what you're getting at, taking his moment to say this massive bloated Republic is incapable of taking care of everyone. We are not capable of being all the Republic. So look how terrible this is, engineering this whole problem, this whole conflict. So he can come in and say, hey, look, now here's the solution, Joel, the thing you read at the beginning. The first Galactic Empire for a safe and secure society. One society, not multiple societies, but one society.
And with that, it's discussed very briefly about how there were things going on in the Senate to try and help Soujen's people, And then the Naboo crisis happened, which was also orchestrated by Palpatine in order for his power grab to become Chancellor. And so, you know, it's the circle of life. And yes, I realize that is a triangle, but it's the circle of life. And it's too, I can't do a circle with my hands. So a triangle it is. And I'm very bad at it. And so, like, all of this still goes back to Palpatine, because once the Naboo crisis had settled down, and once, you know, Palpatine was Chancellor, all of the momentum that was part of that group that Bail and Mon were both part of, that tried to help Soujen's people, it lost all steam. It lost all of the power that it had, because there were other things to talk about now. There were other crises to deal with. And that also goes into the idea of, like, you know, every day there's like new legislation being pushed. There's new things that are happening. And I think that, you know, Mon brings up that the renaming of the Republic to the Empire it's political theater is what it is. And it's absurd. It's ridiculous. And I don't think that anybody realizes that they were living in the Empire for 13 years longer than they thought that they were.
No, I mean, you know, remember, Matthew, a couple of weeks ago when I read you the Revenge of the Sith novelization version of the Palpatine speech, Palpatine literally just goes, and the speech is longer and more depth and a little different, and Palpatine just literally says, we have, you know, pretty much said, we have been an empire for a lot longer than we have been admitting, so let's just admit it. We're an empire. It's like, the scary thing is, he's telling the truth. He is telling the truth. Yes,
He's
we
cooking.
He also said, it's morning in the Republic. There's an 80s reference for you. But no, Ellie, I'll toss it to you. What do you think of Soujen and kind of this more nuanced depiction of the Separatist than we're kind of used to in depictions of the Separatist?
Soujen was cool, man. What an asshole.
Yeah.
The thing about Soujen is I can't kind of get over the ways in which his depiction in the beginning of the book is contrasted with the end, because he is this person who has been extensively enhanced with cybernetics. He has all of these little doohickeys and weapons and data banks in his brain, and by the end of the book, like early on in the book, he's like, well, I could do this, and instead I'm doing this, and this is my robot master plan and whatever. And by the end of the book, he's like doing things like in an impulsive way, and he's like, I know I shouldn't do that, but he's like getting impulsive and more unstable. And the thing that, like, my biggest takeaway with Soujen was just like, he was fundamentally unwell, which is not like big news. Like, of course he would be, but I just, he's not a reliable source. He's not a reliable person. But, you know, at the same time, he is one part of what is left of this fallen regime. The other part being the separatist senators. And, you know, these are two very different, I think, ways you can do it. I guess if you have been subsumed by the Empire. And I don't know. I can't. Soujen acts as a foil to Saw Gerrera, kind of bringing out some of the most like impulsive and unnecessary or arbitrarily biased points in Saw Gerrera. Like Saw Gerrera is like, well, at least we're not butchers, and it's like the only reason he cares about that is because that's what he felt the separatists were. Like, dude doesn't care about butchery. Obviously, he saw Gerrera. He will learn not to, I should say. I will leave him room to change for the worse. And but I don't. Those two characters are so, just as Mon and Bail are kind of the foils to one another in their, I guess, profession. Soujen and Saw are the foils to one another in their profession, which is not wanting to do the Empire thing.
Right.
I mean, I want to say, I mean, they're foils. I almost want to say they're mirrors to each other. I mean, definitely, like you're saying, it's bringing out Saw's just anti-separatist bias, which is ironic given how the separatists feed into the Rebel Alliance and the separatist cause does connect with the rebel cause in important ways. I do think Soujen kind of mirrors Saw in his kind of like you're saying, gradually unhinged, just gonna go and not that necessarily Saw is unhinged, but his lack of conscience just steered away. We see in is it no, it's not Alexander Freed, it's the Battlefront the Battlefront 2 novel, not in Saw's
Christy Golden.
Christy Golden. Saw's already dead by that point, but the way his partisans are willing to just murder civilians left, right, and center, we see that with Saw all the time. So that kind of mirror almost a portent for what Saw will become in a way. So Soujen to me is a very strong foil to someone like Tychon Novoyo, who of course planted and basically made Soujen. But you know how he wants to kill Tychon because is that how I pronounce it, Tychon? Because Tychon's of course the senator who's being reintegrated into the Imperial Senate or the member of Parliament or whatever. And so that question of, I mean, it's a question that does feed into, I mean, it's the Bail and Mon question, the Saw and Mon question of, do you integrate into the system or do you fight against it? It's just fascinating. Soujen and Tychon from the separatist side, taking that from the past.
It's going to be interesting as well, because again, something me and Matthew talk about a lot. When we get to the rebellion proper, the one we see on Yavin, they're not calling themselves the Rebel Alliance to just kick the Empire's butt. They're calling themselves the Alliance to restore the Republic. I bet you there's some people like, wait a minute, I don't want to restore the Republic. I hated the Republic then, I hate it now. And so they're like, well, what is going to happen to some of these rebel cells that have more separatists, like Anton Krieger? Oh wait, he's dead. He died in what happened? What about the Anton Kriegers? Like, wait a minute, I didn't like the Republic even before all the weirdness happened. I don't want to restore it. And I'm very curious to see about that. But Ash, I'm going to ask you a little bit question about the ending of the book. We all know Mon Mothma does nothing wrong, but
ever in her life.
I don't know. Do you think she was right to blow up Soujen and not at least have him get a crack at it? Even though we probably know Palpatine would just go whip, zap. Maybe you could take out Mothma or say Pestage or Dangor, not Dengar, Arstangor. Or Slymore.
Take out Slymore. Nuke Perrin's girlfriend. Please. She's not
Take
fun.
Slymore, please.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's focus on Slymore first. I do not like her. I don't know how anyone can listen to her or spend any time with her and be like, oh, she's fun. Perrin, are you on spice? I need to know.
Maybe she is. Maybe she get her off of work and.
I mean, Greg Pak in the Invader comic, she has an interesting.
That's true, yeah.
In Legends, there's some Palpatine Slymore apparently enjoy each other's company.
That's probably why Mon and Perrin don't make physical contact anymore, because that'd be too much.
Yes.
Mon does not want to do things even by proxy with Palpatine.
That's true. But
Soujen being exploded. What did you think of?
Okay, yes, Soujen going boom.
By Mon. And was Mon right?
Okay, well, Tychon asked her kind of nicely. No, that's not my defense. So essentially, by the point in time, because she was kind of grappling with this, she was like, am I going to do this? Am I not going to do this? And it felt very much like she didn't have her mind made up until Soujen seemed really unstable.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about killing Palpatine, and he was like, I don't care what happens. You can take over. You can be Empress or Supreme Chancellor, whatever you want, which I'm sure she, in the back of her mind, she was like, I'll take it. But for bigger reasons, because she has this whole speech that she gives to him about, yeah, the galaxy is poorer for the loss of the Jedi. Yes, you could potentially have the evidence that my friend needs in order to absolve them. But she already kind of realized that if the Jedi were absolved and the separatists were blamed for that, the coalition that she had formed would collapse. And so even if Palpatine were ousted and her allies were to take over, the broken coalition would not be able to hold power. Right? Because Palpatine has a lot of people on his side. At most, Mon has a portion of the delegation of 2,000 left, right? Because Padme's gone. A bunch of other senators were like, I want nothing to do with this. Some of them can't be trusted. Others, we haven't heard from them in ages because they were arrested or whatever. And there were some people that she had to ultimately, for her own political reasons, in trying to get the Imperial Rebirth Act passed, she had to kind of, in some ways, betray and be like, actually getting the 7 votes here is more important than keeping a promise to you.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was political, like gamesmanship. And that's what she had to play with. And so, you know, best case scenario, if Soujen had been able to help absolve the Jedi, Bael's cause would have succeeded, but the galaxy would be in shambles. Because we also run the risk of, you know, nobody caring, right? And that was a big thing in the beginning. Like, I don't think that Mon was speaking for herself, and she's like, nobody cares about the Jedi, right? Because obviously she does. We see it at the end where she's acknowledging that, like, hey, you know, losing any group of people, any genocide is bad, right? We suffer now because we don't have the Jedi around.
Right.
It's more of the Jedi have been so closed off from the galaxy, and they were so vilified during the Clone Wars by both sides that, you know, so many people just wouldn't care, even if it was proven that Palpatine did it. Because in their eyes, in the eyes of the people of the Republic, now the Empire, they see Palpatine as the guy who ended the war.
He's the beloved chancellor.
They see him as the guy who is restoring things to, like, normal. And Ludmaroy asks Mon these very difficult and uncomfortable questions. Like, if you weren't a senator, if you weren't obsessed with politics and you didn't spend your days with other people who are also obsessed and can have these conversations, like, do you think that you would feel differently? Do you think that you would feel the same outrage that you feel now if it was your side that was doing these things? And that is so many uncomfortable questions that I reached points where I was like, put it down for a minute.
My favorite Ludmaroy moment was where he's like, your coalition has like 12th generation absolute monarchs on your, which just makes the Republic politics already more complicated, because I always like the joke of like, here we are the Democrat Republic, and here is senator from dictator land, supreme dictator monarch the third.
Even Brea. I mean, Brea is a hereditary monarch.
Yeah,
that's true.
You know?
Which means Bael is also part of that. So, you know, but I do think that the coalition had a good balance of individuals, because it was a group of people essentially who realized, like, hey, we're all different. However, we acknowledge that we or our people or our interests will suffer if Palpatine gets to be the absolute dictator that he wants to be. Right? And that was such a big struggle, because how difficult it would be to get so many people who disagree with one another to agree on one thing. Mostly,
look at the real world.
You know where it's happening in the real world, Ash?
Like,
in Star Wars Celebration. Yep.
No, it's happening in Canada, right? Like how many different political groups, different folks, they're all like Trump, tariffs. It's kind of wild to see, you know, or people who are ambivalent about the Canadian flag and Canadian patriotism are all like, standing up, chanting the anthem.
Yeah.
We're all being like, oh, Trudeau, he was so good. even though most of the time we're not. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
it's wild. So
right there, you have this in very real time display of the ways in which, I wouldn't say innocuous, but displays of the ways in which something happening that you could not have predicted has upset all of the rest, right? The Canadian right was so in bed with a lot of the ideology of the American right. And so as soon as you have the new American administration saber rattling at Canada, I guess, you know, there is this huge groundswell of people going, what, why were you, we don't like the Trump stuff. That's not popular at all because he actively dislikes us. And also this like swell of Canadian nationalism. And those were not things those were not things you could plan on as a politician. Right. You had these people like banking on the rise of the new American administration and not expecting that to bite them in the ass.
No, and I'll even take it further because I saw a good tweet about this. It's like, you know, how much of that is a long-term thing? How much of that is just a short-term? Where it's like, you know, like even if the Liberal Party squeaks out a victory, even if it squeaks it out, but like 2 seats, are you really changing it around, or are you just holding it off for another 4 years?
Yeah, I don't think it's very long-term. But I mean, even Doug Ford being part of the team. Oddly enough, the Premier of Alberta, she's sharing the stage with Ben Shapiro, so she's full on. But
oh joy,
yeah. But I don't. It's just this fascinating example of we're seeing like what Mon's coalition that she's built. Yeah, right here in this country.
And I agree with Ash because, like, you know, I think that's a great point because, like, look, you know, even if Soujen got into the office, you know, ultimately, as Ellie says, Star Wars gonna Star Wars, and if he got to Palpatine's seat, he's not gonna meet this frail old man. Palpatine's gonna go zap at him. But you know, to actually do a little bit more historical political stuff, as I talked about last week, you know, even if Mace Windu had Palpatine, much like with the people who knife Caesar tried to do. I said Anakin is getting ready to go full Octavian on everybody, and it's not going to be pretty. Republic was not going to be getting out of that one regardless. It's just one less Palpatine, probably a lot more problems.
Well, as the Mendoverse is showing, and as
Anakin Augustus.
Yeah.
All hail. But yeah, so that's a great point as well.
But also, didn't Mon pay enough for blowing Soujen up? She nearly died dead. She doesn't have a stomach anymore.
She's got the Fennec Shand
She's
going
a cyborg.
And then she turns around and asks Saw Gerrera what she has the stomach for, and I'm screaming at the book, "Nothing, girl! You don't even have a stomach!"
Was this the first time we heard of this, or did we hear of this before?
No, this is the first time.
This is new. This is new. However, I have like moments from Andor that make me think that there's like the reason that I did part of the like foods, like Mon eating food and Perrin like drinking and gambling tracker is for a very specific reason, and it does relate to that. Okay. I think this woman is very unhealthy at the end of the day.
I'm surprised she lives
I could have told you that.
Than Perrin. Like the way that Lud is having to like be like, eat food. And Bale's like, when's the last time you ate? I can't stomach this. You eat it. And she's scarfing it down because she hasn't eaten in 3 days. And I'm like, are you okay?
No.
It feels very much like me, where it's just somebody needs to be like, have you eaten in the past 18 hours? And I'm like, no.
All right, good to know.
And then they need to force me to eat, and I'm like, I actually was really hungry.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm sure the cybernetic stomach is not going to help the work-oriented ED.
God,
oh no,
Jesus Christ.
No. And also, like, for me, that was one of the ways I felt incredibly validated. And then the other ways were just because I've been clocking Mon as somebody who has like anxiety and PTSD for the longest time. But I was like, I don't want to talk about this on the internet because I know how people like to scrap and be like, you're projecting, you don't have a background. I'm like, I'm just calling it like I see it as somebody who also deals with that. So it was very validating reading that. I was like,
Well, literally taking
Vindication.
anxiety meds. Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Oh.
That was awesome. It was like, oh wow, that's very interesting.
I was like, oh, look at that. My girl's medicated. It's not helping.
It's not helping.
No, it is not.
They increase her dosage. I'm like, oh, it's still not helping.
It's called systemic environmental factors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
let's talk about Mon's opposite, who probably also has a lot of needs therapy, needs to be probably medicated, and probably needs a shower, and has been living in caves, and those caves probably have guano, and it's not good for his health. Talk about Saw. Finally,
I was gonna say Bale, and then it
Yeah.
went off
Oh,
the
yeah.
rails there.
you know what? Bale should also be medicated.
I mean,
No,
I'm sure
that
he
too.
probably, I'm sure he should. I'm sure he got high
The,
blood pressure.
the reign of the empire, more like get these bitches on SSRIs.
And they all need to be medicated. They all need
Yeah,
therapy.
right.
They all need to check their blood pressure. But now let's talk about Saw. Saw, the younger years.
Baby boy.
Heartthrob
Yeah.
years.
Oh yeah, the
Mhm.
hearts. Well, yeah. I mean, hey, he's a charismatic looking guy. Yeah. First off, nice Bad Batch connection because of
Real.
that was a good one. That's his speech at the beginning because he says, I forget the line, but he says the line from Bad Batch where he says like, you gotta either adapt or you die or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I forget. That was a good moment. I actually found Saul in this book very interesting for why he's fighting. And it's really fascinating because he outright says it, and how much of it is just him kind of playing around, but how much of it is true. He literally says, I would let you have your empire, but you had to go on and attack us. Right? Like, he's not really fighting for like a just cause or like a grand republic. He's like, you attacked us, so now I'm gonna attack you and harder. Empire, as usual, makes its own worst enemies. That's not it's not real at all. So I found that really interesting. I also found it interesting that I forget who. I think it was Saw himself who said it. Or maybe it was that one of the
Kurama?
ISB characters. Who I
Kurama?
keep forgetting. We haven't talked about.
Or hockey.
Maybe it was Hockey. Ooh, I forgot to talk about those characters too. Who says like we could have made Saw a governor, right? Like he was
He
on
was
the
hockey,
list.
yeah.
He was on the list of like possible governors, which that would have been something. Saw the governor. But it's the governors are military people, so Saw's a military person. Willing to shoot first, ask questions later.
Moff Gerrera.
Yeah, it's true. So that's Saw, and he blows up a historic site. Not one of many. He'll be going around the historic sites, just blowing them up by accident.
A personal attack on Mon, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's like, I
right.
want
I
to
will
go to there, and
say-
Saw's like, I blew it up, and she's like,
Come on.
okay, looks like I'm postponing my vacation for another decade. We'll be
It's a
fine.
bummer. A.O. Dodgerit's very
Yeah.
historically valuable. Not the worst thing he does.
True. He
I,
has, he has worked on
sense of
Jeddah.
scale. Come on, that's
Sure.
not that.
That's true.
I know it's half a planet, but
Planetary vandalism isn't that bad.
I don't know.
With Saw Gerrera, no.
Who
W-
died?
When
true.
Mon thought it was Bale doing the planetary vandalism, it was like, this is the worst thing that Bail Organa has ever done. With Saw, I'm like, he's done worse. He will
Yeah.
do worse.
Yeah.
He will do. First, just blow up places, then blow up people. But it's interesting. But also, you do see he is the charismatic militia leader. And I find it fascinating. Like they say, like he's been practicing this speech, so it's not like he is a natural talent, but he's also refining those talents. He is trying to become more and more that leader that Anakin taught on Onderon during the Onderon arc and Ahsoka later. I also found it really interesting because I watch Rebels. It won't be those episodes though. That Bale kind of sells Saw out at the end. He's like, he's no good. Onderonian terrorist did this, and then years later in a Rebels episode, he's like, "Hey, Ghost Crew, here's Saw Gerrera. You should work with him. We're going to Geonosis." Where at the beginning, Mon at the end is like, "Look, I got to meet this guy. Bale, just get me in contact with him. I think we need to talk." And we have the new Rebel trio. It's no longer Mon, Garm, and Bale. It's now Mon, Saw, and Bale. And I think, honestly, I think Saw's kind of a better representation of the more militant side of the rebellion. Because I like the fact that Saw is not a rich aristocrat belongs to like an elite. He is on the ground boots kind of guy. And it's kind of nice to kind of see that also a little bit that class divide. The book doesn't go into it as much as you'd hope, but I liked it.
It really should have.
It should have.
Yeah.
But you know,
Maybe the next two.
I hope
Maybe.
so. But yeah, Ellie, I'll throw it to you. What you think about that? And if you want to add anything about the class divide, feel free.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it really did keep coming back to the fact that I was reading about very rich people. You know, Mon, it's really cool that she's on her anxiety meds and stuff, and that she gets this amazing like health care at the end of the book. That wouldn't have happened to her if she was any less wealthy. And
That's true.
like it is very much a mark of her privilege and her status.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think the characters are relatively aware of. Like there are a lot of these moments where you have characters like Mon and Bale and, you know, even kind of Soujen just like accepting responsibility. They're like, yeah, I share in the responsibility for the harm that has been done to X. And that's good. I think it's, you know, unavoidably inadequate. Like that's never going to be enough because there are no you know, right ways to go about that in their position. But I don't know. I appreciated that all of those characters were like, yes, I am complicit. Yes, the Republic did destroy your people's lives for its short attention span. And I probably could have done more. I think that is an essential thing to do in order to get us to sympathize with some of the most powerful people in existence in the setting. Mon is powerful. She says so to the separatists. That is why she is relevant, because of the power that she holds. And that is a thing that I think she wields to the best of her ability and inadequately. Those two things are just kind of true. And I don't know, it's brutal, but it is necessary.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I like Saw. I remember when I was doing my revolutions in Star Wars with my buddy Red Leader, and we're talking about the New Hope, and we're talking about like you know George and Luke Skywalker kind of being projections of each other, which they are. You know, Luke Skywalker is the college kid who maybe got some stuff on campus and like he wants to go fight the system, man. But he's still a rich college kid. You know, Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, they got a nice farm. They got employees. They pay the employees well. You know, he's an upper middle class Tatooinean kid who just wants to go to college. You know, while Saw is, I don't know what Saw's life was like before the war, but I'm going to assume it wasn't great either. He probably lived in a hovel. Maybe, I don't know, with Stila. So it was nice to see that moment. And, you know, Saw, for all of his faults, is the one person who I think does speak a little truth to power. He's the one who actually says it's not going to be the law that defeats the Emperor. The Separatists were never going to sign a treaty. Although that might be him. Well, yeah, Dooku would never have allowed it. That was the whole point. You know, and I mean, I just love that final meeting in the end. Like that to me, I mean, I kind of wish there was more to the book, quite frankly. But I guess we'll get more of it in the later ones. Of just Saw, Mon, and Bale together, and kind of them charting their own paths before they eventually reconvene again. Ellie, did you want to talk about that moment as well to add to the Saw stuff?
I think it was really nice to see all of these three people coming together and just say, okay, what do you have? What do we each have? What are we bringing to the table? And what can we do with that? And I think Saw was like reasonably defensive about his position, even though he was kind of an asshole about it. Because he is coming at it from a very different perspective from two sitting senators in this meeting with him. But at the same time, I think, you know, that is Mon and Bale's big change is toward the beginning of the book. They're like, okay, I want to use these levers of power, and that doesn't like go away per se, but they're like, I'm gonna meet with the terrorists, which is huge. Like this is massive for both of them. I mean, it's a massive act of treason really early on, in this period. Because, Saw, for all of I think his numerous faults, I'm not a Saw Gerrera apologist, despite thinking that he is endlessly entertaining. I really quite like Saw. For all of his many faults, Saw, in his status as an edgelord contrarian, is very good at identifying misuse of authority, right? He is I think at this point inherently distrustful of it, and that means that he is right. He is right to say, you're not going to get that far. The Empire isn't going to let you defang it. Right. He is right to say, hey, maybe them occupying Onderon is a bad thing and we need to get the hell out of here. At every point, he has correctly identified the situation. I don't think Saw is great about what you do after you figure out the situation, but God, does he have his ear to the ground in that regard? And I think that is essential for people who are living in the highest towers of the richest planet in the galaxy.
No, I mean, Saw knew what the Empire was before the Empire even exists, where Mon kind of has to figure that out at the end, and Bale too. But Matthew, what do you see? Seems like you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating thinking about, again, we mentioned that the foils for Soujen. Again, his bias against the separatists, it does go into the whole saga where the Republic was okay on Onderon, right? The Republic presence, and then the separatists overthrow, and they're the ones who screw up Onderon, right? So hence that grievance, and of course killing Stilla. We have that in mind. All throughout this novel, I intuitively heard Forrest Whitaker, and I saw Forrest Whitaker. I saw him 20 years down the road, and he's the exact same person. And that speaks to say, oh, he's consistent. He doesn't have much in the way of character growth. I mean, maybe it'll be interesting to see in the next few novels if he is more willing to give room to what Mon and Bale are doing with the Senate, with maybe even to say, okay, well, at least Alderaan can start funding these weapons and funding this fleet that might be emerging here, that that might come up with Brea being involved in this. But also to say, yeah, he doesn't change much. He's still that gruff, oddly enough, again, very separatist in the sense of rebellious character that is very important. And we don't get change, but we do get depth in his ability to analyze the situation. In his we get the inner look at guerrilla tactics. I mean, there's a reason he's called Gerrera, right? It's a bit of a funny pun that Filoni and George Lucas did during Clone Wars. Yeah,
I mean, Halle Bertoni. Let's be real here.
Yeah. It's one of those, right? The Saw, just
I'm a gun die.
So cutting down the tree there. So it was a fascinating, keeping in mind, of course, that Mon and Bale end up moving in his direction to some extent. It was a fascinating look at, okay, what does it take even in this time to start building this kind of militant movement that we know is going to move towards greater atrocities. And I mean, that's another thing, is what lays the groundwork for that movement towards increased radicalization, both what is understandable from our perspective and also problematic. And so again, it's going to, I mean, that's the thing, is Bale and Saw revolve around Mon Mothma, who is kind of in the middle of the two of them.
Yeah, again, it kind of reminds me a little of two things I've said in the past. I feel like you can make the argument Saw won the battle for the soul of the rebellion, even if not necessarily the tactics or the methodology, in terms of being a more militant organization of like, we got to take down the Empire. And during the day, my Revolutions in Star Wars podcast, which you go check out, plug. I was talking to my buddy Red, and he's like, I asked Red, hey, is the Rebel Alliance a revolutionary movement or no? And he kind of said, like, it kind of becomes one by the end because ultimately, maybe in the early on, it's like, hey, we can show the Death Star to the Senate, and the Senate might do something. And then by the end of Rogue One, it's like, oh no, we have to blow up the Death Star. We're taking down the Empire, the Stormtroopers, the ISB. It all gotta go down. Maybe become more pragmatic when they get the power, but Mon, at the end, like I said, her arc is from, I'm going to legislate Palpatine's power out of existence to, no, I got to blow this guy up.
Yeah.
We have the chance to kill him. We're going to kill him on the Death Star, too. So, yeah, I love that moment, the final moment of them as well. As we kind of wrap up, let's just go over a little bit. Oh, actually, Ash, I guess I'll mention it to you. What did you make of the final moment between Mon, Saw, and Bail? The trio are heroes, per se. And kind of Mon being the one to... And what do you think about Mon being the one to orchestrate it? Because I was a little surprised by that. I always thought it was going to be Bail, but it's like, oh no, Mon's the one who's like, let's meet this guy. Let's make this...
I think it makes more sense for Mon to be the one to orchestrate it because she doesn't have that prior connection. She's the one who's requesting this introduction with Saw through Bail. And the way that she does it, the place that she does it, the way that throughout this, she is certain that she has the upper hand, that she is in control of this situation. I just think that makes so much sense for Mon as a character because, she does see herself as, in most situations, the intellectual, level-headed person.
Pragmatist.
Right? Despite the anxiety and the work-related eating disorders and the PTSD and all of the other stuff that is going on in her life, she does see herself as a very level-headed and logical person. And so, when you add somebody like Bail, who would lean more towards emotion, right? We see him lean towards emotion throughout this entire book. Mon is like, here's the logical steps to take Palpatine down, right? We're going to work within the system of power that let him exist. We're going to fix that. And that is the way that it should work. And she's right. That's the way it should work. And it almost did. But then Masameda's like, actually, no. Why do you think that we're going to do this? Yeah, right.
Red card.
Which I want to see the aftermath of that because the way that Mon is going to have a mess to clean up in the second book, and probably a toddler on her hip as well because.
Yeah.
Chapter 72, I don't call that intimacy. I call that
Lita.
Did Lita just get conceived?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, I thought that too.
And so, Saw is also a very emotionally driven character. He does have a little bit more logic to him than somebody like Bail in this book, who's like, my daughter is the child of the friend that I just lost and a Jedi. In order to protect her, because I'm a girl dad and that is my main priority,
we love Bail.
I have to absolve the Jedi. I need to exonerate them. I need to do all of these things. That is purely led by emotion, right? There are some logical steps that he takes there, but it is purely driven by emotion. And that's not a bad thing. But like Mon is not thinking emotionally here. Right. The second somebody tries to bring up emotion with her, she's like,
she kind of shut it down because of her all her experiences, right?
The great irony, I think, of that is Bail's trying to be all the Jedi. He loved the Jedi. Mon's acting more like a Jedi. She's kind of more detached and like,
That's true.
Can't let my attachments get to me. It's like I have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Lud tries to bring up to Mon the idea of his emotions and her. And she's like, no, I actually don't. I don't think I'm
Shut
going.
down.
I'm not running away with you. No.
Like she considers it. She's like, oh, that would
Very
be nice.
briefly.
But
like,
yeah, no nice.
Yeah, it is interesting. I have in my notes here, Mon, the pragmatist, Saw the militant, and Bail, the idealist, the moral center. It is kind of sad they couldn't work together more because they would complement each other quite
Mhm.
nicely. Like, I think like I remember in the book, Month always talking about I can build political coalitions. That's what you need. That's what Rebel
Yeah.
Alliance eventually needed. It needed kind of the someone to like bring it all together, and like
It was
all
an
these
alliance, literally an
yeah.
alliance.
It
maybe
needed all three of them,
yeah.
right?
It's kind of,
Like,
and it says a lot that eventually, Republic even gets worse. The new Republic kind of gets worse when she leaves because they're like she kind of held together by a thread, and
Mhm.
clearly
held
when
together
she
by mother.
retires, it's like, oh nope. But no, it is interesting that Bale and Saul are the emotional ones. Like she is the Jedi in the story almost,
Mhm.
despite not having anything to do with the Jedi in the storyline. And I
Mhm.
think that's really interesting as well. Ellie, do you want to add anything to anything we just said?
I just think these people have hard jobs, man.
It's
I
true.
know.
They are all there are no right options at this
Mhm.
point.
Yeah.
It's all messy. It's all based on vibes and feeling and just doing the best thing that you can try to do and
Mhm.
being wrong. They are all wrong.
Oh yeah.
More power to them. Critical support to all three of them.
Yeah.
Well, you know who else had a
Yeah.
stressful job? Our two Imperial characters, whose names escaped me because I didn't write them down.
Hockey and Chemish.
Hockey and Chemish.
Chemish.
Yeah, I mean,
Or misguided youth.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I thought that was an interesting one, especially the 40-40-footers.
Yeah.
That's a Proud Boy militia kind of thing.
That was great. That was great. I loved
I-
that stuff.
I know, me too. I actually really like Ellie, the scene during the protest, because I felt like, you know what, he does make a good point of like, starts out with smaller people, and then
Mhm.
eventually you get normies to join you, and don't shout today, which you can talk about tomorrow, which is actually good
Mhm.
advice. Just
He has a very good understanding of how that, if he wants that to be a multi-day protest, all of that is good advice.
It's
just for
true.
evil.
He's right on the money.
It's just unfortunately his powers are being used for evil.
It's unfortunate
you
that
know-
he's a Mon Mothma hater, which means that he and I are diametrically opposed.
Just how to use
That's
the techniques, anyone
Yeah.
can do it,
Tactics. Yeah.
whether for good or ill.
Exactly. But also, and those two also kind of bring in a great thing that I really liked about this book as well, and something, Matt, we talked about. We get to see the effects of the Battle of Coruscant, and this is something that I talk about, like the
Yeah.
realism, or at least attempted realism of this book. As far as it pushes it. It's like, in Revenge of the Sith, we see the Battle of Coruscant, epic battle. I love that moment, But at the end, it's like, Coruscant looks fine. Maybe Anakin smashed a plane tower, but I don't think anyone was in it. I think it was fine. But like, it kind of tries to explain, why does Coruscant not look like a complete destructive death waste? But also says, actually, no, there was some destruction and death in the Battle of Coruscant, and people are traumatized for it. I have always said one thing I like depicting the Clone Wars is it's the closest thing you could get to a World War I allegory in Star Wars in terms of this big traumatic event that caused everyone to go feral afterwards. And as my friend Red would say,
Yeah.
and kind of seeing the aftermath and kind of with these characters, like, why would you join the Empire? And it's like, oh, okay, I can see it. But even then, they're not having a good time either.
Right. I mean, it's the war weary. We've brought this up a few times, and the main one chapter from Chris Kempshaw's book I've read yet about the Clone Wars. Yeah, the war weary galaxy. Coruscant, at least the parts of Coruscant that are broken down, and also you see the 40-40, and it's that far down that level. Well, I guess it's not that far down, but we see the underbelly a little bit. Yeah, just this reminder of the toll throughout this book of the Clone Wars, and that's kind of bringing what I was saying at the beginning of bringing Revenge of the Sith through. It really, Alexander Freed did an amazing job of thinking through where people are at, and of course Chris Kempshall certainly helped with that thought process, thinking through where everyone would be at this point. And so we have this symbol of of the gleaming bright center of the galaxy. It has its bit of rough around the edges at points, but by and large it's also standing tall because it stood on these very centralist imperialist ideas, or not ideas, processes already. Again, with fascinating contrast to, say, Lena So, who is doing her darndest in this literal golden age to say, no, this is actually a beacon, literal beacon of equality and the common good. No, it's being, we see the other end of it. And again, the toll of the destruction, but also the fact that it's so well intact still.
Yeah, I mean, me, I can't wait to see the transition from We Are All Republic to the First Galactic Empire, as we get past the High Republic stuff, and even going back in the past to the Old Republic stuff. It's like, I'm sure Palpatine's building on some political traditions in the Republic that are unfortunate. But Ellie, you said you really like these moments in the book. Would you like to expand on that? What you liked about
Yeah, I just thought Chemist, I don't know what their name is. I felt like there was something especially grounded about the way they were written, and hockey as well. There's this kind of, I would say, pervasive idea throughout Star Wars community where there's a type of guy who's like, I just want them to show the normal people in the Empire and how they're not all bad. And it's like, well, that's not helpful, but like I get that impulse because there are people who are just living, and hockey has an ideology. Chemish has ideology, and they have varying degrees of endorsements of the apparatus of the Empire itself, but they're also much smaller than it, and working within it is a they have a very particular relationship to it. There's the scene where Chemish is, I think they're climbing like a radio tower or something. I can't remember. And they're just thinking about how angry they are about the people in their family that they've lost and all of this stuff. And they're just going, I hate politics. I hate politics. I just want to work for the state. And these are not compatible ideas, but there are these ways in which like authoritarian sentiment is itself the negation of like actual political system, just in favor of a guy doing it for you. And that's something that they kind of grow past, but they aren't sure that they even dislike this kind of like 40-40 movement. They don't, you have the Boogaloo Boys here down on Coruscant's underlevels, and Chemish is like, well, they're okay. They're okay people. I'm a little bit sketchy on them, but they're getting along.
How Juna died. I mean, that's the fascinating thing. They joined the group despite also, did they kill their cousin? Like, that kind of lack of connection almost.
But they also do blame Mon for Suna's death. So that's like a whole other thing. And that funeral scene, not gonna lie, pissed me off because the way I lose my absolute shit every time there is a tragedy that is deeply embedded in the politics or belief system that the perpetrator holds. And you get people like, don't politicize the tragedy. The tragedy would not have happened if not for the politicization or the politicizing of the victims. Right? Like, the first time I heard it, and I have hated it ever since, really, was at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando when that happened. And it was like, don't politicize the tragedy and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, the lives of queer people are constantly politicized. And so, like, any violence against them is a political statement, one way or another. If you are attacking a person because of who they work for or their identity or anything of that nature, it is political. And who the hell Westboro Baptist Church what kind of Westboro Baptist Church mindset make someone picket a funeral. Like, I nearly lost my mind reading that.
Well, that's, you got a good book then if that's happening.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's funny also you mentioned Shemis blaming Mon for the death of their cousin. I mean, I haven't read Lost Star, but I know what happens. Where we're gonna see a kind of a big scale of this with Alderaan, where it's like, yeah, some people realize, oh my god, the Empire's evil, they just blew up my home planet. And other people are like, wait a minute, no, the rebels are to blame for this. I'm gonna double down on the Empire now. It's interesting kind of seeing that kind of mental
like Alderaan must have been so evil that it invoked the righteous wrath of the Empire.
Yeah, right. I mean, people do not have, by their very nature, have rational responses to atrocity,
right.
And they rationalize it how they can, right? People are not radicalized by the ideology itself. They're radicalized by kinship and community and pain. And Chemish going to this like developing militia in some ways makes as much sense as anything else they could do, because they have experienced in their life the repercussions of political violence, and so they are engaging in political violence. And is there a contradiction? Yes, but the contradiction is the point.
And you make a good point. Like, again, the World War I thing. Hi Daisy. People, in World War I, that radicalized a bunch of people, but it's like, talking to my friend Red, it's like, no, not a bunch of people came out of World War I saying it were imperialist empires, it's all their fault. It's like, no, for every new communist born in the trenches of World War I, there were future Nazis, like Hitler, who were born in the trenches of World War I, and, I don't know what happened if World War I never happened, how his life would have gone down. I don't want to guess. But, it definitely made what was already kind of a crazy guy even crazier. And it made crazy, it's like, you don't always break, to like, I want worker revolution equality. Sometimes you're like, now I hate this kind of people for reasons I don't know why, but I fought in World War I, so I'm just now mad. Doesn't make any sense, but...
People are really quite terrible at identifying and responding to the root causes of the things that make their lives hard. Like, that's just a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, all the folks who voted for Trump thinking he'll fix the cost of groceries, and all the just to own the libs.
Well, my dad just got back from groceries, so hopefully those costs are not that bad.
How much did he pay for eggs? I'm just wondering. I don't know.
I don't know.
The avian flu thing. That's
Oh yeah, I don't think they are selling eggs right now at the store. They weren't last time. So I haven't checked the price. I'll check I'll tell you, report back to that later.
There you go.
I think we've covered almost everything about this. Kind of one final thing, and I'll kind of give it to Ash, and two kind of final things, and I'll give the first one to Ash. Matthew put out the Monaissance.
It's coming.
It has been amazing in these last couple years, really, to see a character who, and I mean this in the nicest way, I really do, who kind of was a glup shitto, like for Star Wars fans, right? Like, she was, like, it's like, I know who Mon Mothma is. Yeah, I know who Mon Mothma is. I know because I like, oh, look, the books. She's reading the Thrawn trilogy. Mon Mothma, that's cool. But, she was never a well-rounded character. She was the political person. She was the chief of state, if you read the post-Endor stuff. She was the senior rebel leader above Leia. It really wasn't until, honestly, really wasn't until Andor. Rogue One set the siege a little bit. Rebels kind of does some little bit of stuff, but not really until Andor. And this book where it's like, finally, after years and years, we're making Mon Mothma into a fleshed out character with wants, feels, family, history,
trauma,
PTSD, medication, food she needs to eat, and all that. And it's been amazing, especially the character who, I was a big Legends fan, to kind of see that history of a character who has been with us for so long, but only now do I feel like we're really starting to know you for the first time. And, Ash, as you've done the Mon Mothma project, and I'm sure you're doing all the research on Mon and your back when she was first created and what that, I bet that's been cool to chronicle and see that evolution from kind of Glup Shido to character, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, so first shout out to the Legends writers who did so much work to be like, hey, she had 26 seconds in Return of the Jedi or something like that, and we want to do more with that because she's obviously important. The big thing for that is she walks up, everyone shuts up and listens to her, and then Admiral Akbar and General Maydeen are both introduced by name. She is not. She requires no introduction. She is that girl. And I love that they picked up on that and allowed her to have a story in Legends where we saw things like she had a daughter who was also named Lita, slightly different spelling. She also had a son, right, who died at the Battle of Hoth.
Oh, I didn't know that.
While I would say that, yes, 100%, she used to be an absolute Glup Shido, affectionate. I don't think there's a derogatory version of Glup Shido. I feel as though she still has not completely lost the status of being a Glup Shido because, while she has shot into this stardom and the spotlight in recent years, especially with Andor and now still Andor and the Mask of Fear, she's a main character in this book. There is still that big issue that I encounter a lot as a Mon Mothma fan, as a Mon Mothma cosplayer, when I'm like, oh, this is the character I'm cosplaying, or oh, she's my favorite character in Star Wars. I still get the, who's that?
Really?
And I'm trying to be like, okay, so she's in the, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that. So for mainstream film fans, they really don't know who she is. And ultimately it gets to the point where I'm like, she's the one that said, many Bothans died to bring us this information. And they're like, oh, her, I love her. Is that her name? I'm like,
yeah.
The Bothans lady.
Good restraint there, Ash. Good job.
You just lead with that.
And that's true. That's true. And I feel like casual film enjoyers are more likely to recognize names like Ahsoka Tano or Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, or Grogu / Baby Yoda than they are to recognize the name of a character who is actually in one of the main line Skywalker Saga Star Wars films. I'm saying 1 through 9, right? And these characters have never appeared, but if you're like, oh, I really like Ahsoka Tano, they're like, oh, I know who that is. Delightful, cool. But you don't know literally the leader of the Rebel Alliance. And part of that is because it took until Andor Episode 4, thank you, Clea Markey, for saying her name on screen in live action in a non-cut scene.
That's the first time, eh?
39 years after the introduction of the character. Her name is not said. She's only referred to as
She just shows up in
Senator.
Rogue One.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in the novelization by Alexander Freed, and I think in the graphic novel, Jin's like, who are you? And Mon does introduce herself, although in the novel, Draven kind of snaps at her you know who she is. Jin's like, I'm just playing here. I just want to see what will happen. Right? But it's just so interesting that it took that long for her name to be said. And because I was like, I'm pretty sure it happens in Rogue One. No, she's only referred to as Senator, which could be one of thousands of people. And so while she's on a different Glup Shido status, I think she still somewhat holds on to it, just not as much as somebody say, Baylor Valance, who you really only know of if you've read the comics and you are insane. because the comics
Or have a
drive you
comics
insane.
podcast.
Or have a comics podcast, right? Like,
True.
there are more niche characters,
Yeah.
but she is still
Yeah.
kind of niche.
To quote Mandalorian, she kind of walks both ways. Walks both paths.
Exactly.
I
And
hope that
And she
changes.
swings for both teams as well. I don't know. She does sports.
It's true.
She knows how to ball and she knows Aristotle. That's
There you go. I hope that changes because I mean Andor is the prestige show. It's the show that that non-Star Wars fans will tune into because it's so connected and so grounded to our real world. She's gonna have a bigger role in season 2. I mean, the Gorman Massacre is gonna be such a major plot point. She has that moment in Ahsoka with the 3PO in that scene, but even then, you're right. It's not there yet. That is baffling. I mean, because we're just in the bubble, right? We're like, well, yeah, Mon Mothma. Also, if we know you,
because you guys know me.
we're doing it. If we're doing a Taylor Swift panel, less than a week.
At the
but
same
yeah,
time,
yeah,
I do want to gatekeep Mon Mothma because every time something happens with her in any sort of story or what have you, I am exposed to the most horrendous takes known to man, and my block list increases so much.
Even though you're not on Twitter
various
anymore?
platforms.
Fair.
I have been blocking people who completely misunderstand her character. I've been doing that for about 2.5 years. I've fought with people who are like, oh, but this, and I'm like, okay, but if you read this book, this actually answers your question. They're like, well, I'm not going to read that. I'm like, then you're being blocked. I'm not wasting my time arguing with you about things I'm correct
I
about.
mean, I've seen a little bit of it myself, even though I don't really engage with it that much, where it's like, it's the same people who are like always are trying to like project a little too much real worldism into your Star Wars, where it's like, Mon Mothma's she's our allegory for Hillary Clinton. It's like,
and I'm like,
not even the hairstyle.
no.
I mean, is the hairstyle? Not really.
Not quite.
No.
I mean, look, I felt a little of that watching Andor only because I thought that this kind of reminds me of like the SNL versions of Bill and Hillary and Perrin's Bill, where he's like he's
SNL versions.
he's like just the party dude, and then Hillary's supposed to be the smart one, the parody version. But no, I feel that, and yeah, you're right. I think she walked both worlds, which is like I do think more people do kind of know who Mon Mothma is, even like not even the heavily indoctrinated of Star Wars fandoms, where it's like, I remember in Rogue One, a bunch of my friends who they weren't Star Wars fans, mega fans, but they do know it. We're like, oh wow, Mon Mothma's in the trailer. I was like, oh my god, Mon Mothma's in the trailer. That's a big deal for me. That's another sign I knew that movie was going to be special. But yeah, you're probably right. I think sadly, there's still a lot where it's like, oh yeah, she's the Boston lady. I'm sorry. Ellie, do you want to add anything about that before?
I think people should stop being annoying about women who are in Star Wars.
Yes.
Well, there's that.
It would make my life a lot easier and better.
Amen.
Thank you.
Well,
they always seem to be more mad at Mon Mothma for not being a fascist than they are at Palpatine for being a fascist. And I'm like, maybe
I wonder
you're
why
a
that is.
fascist. I'm like,
does Mon Mothma need to get extra wrinkly and wear a cloak and shoot lightning out of her hands? I mean, look.
It would still be gorgeous if they let Genevieve O'Reilly do that. I would still stand.
I mean, look, it's not going to happen. But if Andor really wants to be 11 out of 11 show, instead of when Mon Mothma gives her speech to the Senate, Palpatine shows up, and then Mon Mothma drives the lightsaber, and then Palpatine and her just go at it. I'm kidding.
That would be wild.
It'd be great. Just throw in the Senate seats again. It's like back to the old days. I'm kidding.
She has to ask where his Smashball team is, and he needs to assemble one. And in that time, she makes a clean getaway.
Exactly.
Clean getaway. People died.
Yes. Okay. Final question now. Ellie, I'll toss this one to you. The final question. How did you what do you expect from the future of the trilogy? How were you satisfied as this book as the beginning of a trilogy, but also had to stand on its own? Are you excited about different authors taking on the reign? Do you wish it was Alexander Threed throughout the thing? And I guess, how did you feel coming out of this book at the end? And excitement for what's next, or trepidation?
I think, as much as I appreciate, one person just getting to do their thing for a trilogy, Alexander Freed's already done that. That's fine. If you want to read a trilogy by Alexander Freed, that's happened already.
And it's a great
also,
trilogy
frankly,
too.
it's very good books. I've wanted Rebecca Roanhorse back for years, so I'm eating pretty good there. But because of that, because all three authors will be different people, I feel like I have no idea what to expect. There's going to be, a gap. My guess is that the next one will be a lot closer to like Andor adjacent. And I really genuinely, there are pieces here that are laid down, and there's setup and there's all this stuff. I don't know what's coming back next time. I don't know what it's going to be about. It's going to be cool probably, but who knows? Genuinely, no idea.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, I definitely felt where we ended was pretty good. Mon's gonna keep Monin at the Senate. Bale's gonna kind of gather up his resources on Alderaan as best he can. I guess this is the equivalent of a safe city or a sanctuary city. Alderaan's sanctuary city gets blown up. And Saw's
Bale will bail. Saw will see,
Exactly. Saw will see and blow up. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see where they come back. But Matthew, how do you feel about the ending where our characters end up? And do you like the fact we're getting different authors for this trilogy? And what are you expecting for the future?
I'm hoping it continues in the more radical direction, in the more this is what the rise of an authoritarian system and rise of authoritarian world looks like, and connecting it, making statements about our real world. Rebecca Roanhorse, Indigenous author. She doesn't have to bring that in if she doesn't want to, but I imagine she doesn't as much in Resistance Reborn that she has in her other work. So hoping something there. Definitely. I mean, it does, this novel, Mask of Fear, really does succeed in being a great standalone, full story, complete story, well charted, well paced, really well paced. I didn't actually find it all that slow. I thought it was really, really gripping.
Oh yeah.
And giving us this tone, this vibe that the other two novels are probably going to carry forward, even if the story is different. The time setting is different. I even forgot there's gonna be a time jump, so that's exciting too. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I do hope that they do have things as a trio with the folks at Random House Worlds and Lucasfilm plotted some things out, kind of like Team Luminous had plotted everything out. So that is what they're gonna build on and expand on. I think some of the smaller parts. I think some of the 4040s might, this ends with this thing of Chemish questioning, okay, how did Zuna die? What is the connection? And that's spurring their question on to say, what's the connection between the 4040s and Imperial intelligence? And so maybe probably going to go deeper into the brutality of Imperial intelligence and the brutality of of the governors, that that they hinted at that as well, that the whole tag doctrine of ruling through fear of a Star Destroyer falling on your planet. That, and then again, what I was saying before of the increasing turn in Mon Mothma's politics from a politics of negotiation and of legislation to a politics of radicalization, but then also restraining Saw, as we see in Rebels, and trying to
still wanting a republic, just maybe
and still wanting a republic. And so that character journey going to be fleshed out throughout.
Yeah, I'm excited for Rebecca Roanhorse too, although for a very different reason, because she was her connections, her canon connections in Resistance Reborn,
Yeah.
brilliant. And I think because we're gonna have that time jump, we're gonna be in an era that has been more covered. I mean, this was covered too. I mean, we got Bad Batch references, kind of, but we got eras like after Jedi Fallen Order, Kenobi. We got the Pass, not the Path of the Open Hand. What's that other Jedi Pass, Matthew?
The
one.
the Jedi path, the escape path.
The
Like,
escape
it's
path.
called
Hidden path.
Called
The hidden path. Thank
The
you.
hidden path.
Sorry, I got my pass confused.
Yes.
We got the hidden pass. Well, Rebels hasn't happened yet. That's happening soon. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited for that, and I wonder if also the tone might change to maybe not just be reflective of Andor, but also more reflective of, hey, we're getting to the original trilogy when things start to get a little more brighter and hopeful, and maybe a little bit more Star Warsy, as we would say.
Do we know when book 2 is going to be set?
I don't know. I always just assumed it's like in the middle of it all. But that's just me. I always thought it was like, book 1's the early years. Book 2, maybe it ends with like Mon meeting Luthen, and then the end is like the final few months before, maybe a little during Andor even,
maybe,
or something like that. But Ash, what do you think of how this book ended with our characters and where they're at, and hopes or excitements for the future?
Every time the end of this book is brought up, all I can picture is exactly what happens in that last chapter. I'm really excited for Rebecca Roanhorse to come back because I loved Resistance Reborn. I'm really excited to see her write Mon because she hasn't got to do that before, because Mon wasn't even mentioned in Resistance Reborn. Leia was respecting her wishes, and Mon was like, I'm asleep. It's like, you're going to wake up at some point. She's like, I am asleep.
Let her sleep.
But Fran Wild, who is doing the third one, which is due out in 2027, she got to write Mon in Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. She wrote No Contingency. And I loved what she did with Mon in that story, because for me, that was such a big reason why I was holding on to I was like, she feels so anxiety right here in this whole time. And maybe it was just the situation, but is it though? Because this feels like an ongoing problem. And just getting to build on that, I think is going to be incredibly important. I do think that, the last book in the trilogy is going to kind of wrap up around the time of Andor starting, right?
Right.
And so, with that, we know that Lita is definitely going to happen at some point. And maybe she is very, very kind of present at the very end of this book. I have a tag for that on some of my Monte fan fiction, but Lita Mothma in the most unexpected way possible. And it is on one, I think it's on one fic that she was conceived of. But now I'm like, well, that ruins the whole Tay is her real father headcanon if this is real. I also have headcanons regarding that whole situation and the pregnancy and all of that, which it's not going to help Mon's anxiety, because the last pregnant person that she knew was Padme, who died. And I don't think that she's going to be coping well with that. So if we do end up skipping all of that and we just get brought back after Lita has been born, that's going to add new complexities to Mon Mothma, because now she's going to be like, I have a kid at home that I have to worry about. I need to be careful to try and not get arrested, because does Perrin know how to feed a baby? Is he going to be like, do you want a beer? And it's like, she's 3. And it's like, I don't know, what am I supposed to do with her?
She is rich enough to have servants.
That is true.
Get the nanny droid.
Very true.
Yeah,
but, I think that she's not going to want to take these ginormous risks. Like,
Mhm.
I could get blown up doing this. She's probably not going to do that. And I'm okay with that because I'm like, it makes sense. You have a kid now. You've got to have some self-preservation skills that you seemed to lack in the first book, and that she seems to lack in a lot of stories.
Yeah.
But it's fairly consistent, and I've always loved the way Alexander Freed writes her. He's one of the men that I'm like, I can trust you with her characterization. And to me, that is so important when when there is a male author and I'm like, I can trust you with this female character who is incredibly special to me. Right. And I just know that I can, like, that trust is built on something very important. And for me, this was built on the Rogue One novel, Contingency Plan in the first From a Certain Point of View book, and Alphabet Squadron, because the little bit that we see of her in Alphabet Squadron, she's phenomenal. Right.
I forgot she was there.
And I think she's only mentioned in the first 2 books, and then she appears in the last one.
Yeah, she shows up in the last one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I really have always loved the way that he writes her. And so, it was just finding out the authors for this trilogy. I was like, oh, I'm going to eat. It's going to be a feast. There's going to be gaps, but I will survive.
Yes. Welcome to the Monassons.
Welcome to the Monassons, baby. Let's go.
The Monassons. Also, another aftermath thought connection, and then we'll wrap up. At first, now she has she gets a robot stomach, and then in aftermath, her poor right arm just gets almost numb. It's does it work by the end? I mean, I guess it does because she looks fine in Ahsoka, but it's remember she kind of has a crippling thing for the explosions.
She just got shot. They tried to assassinate her.
I bet Mom was just thinking oh, not again.
Not again.
Not again.
Not again.
She's gonna hate med centers by the end of her life. This is why, if she ever dies, it will be at home with me by her side.
You specifically.
Me specifically, because someone has to take care of her, and I trust me. I don't do well with that sort of thing, but I can handle it.
There we go.
For her,
Star Wars authors, take note. You have the right person. There you go.
And I think that will do it for this discussion. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
It's a great conversation as always. We knew it would be, but glad to be part, and glad that you guys were able to jump in. Thanks everyone for joining us in the comments. Please let us know what you thought of Mask of Fear, Raid of the Empire Mask of Fear, what you think of if you're going to be at Toronto Comic-Con, if you're going to be at Star Wars Celebration, check out those panels, check out our panels, comment below in the boxes that are not going anywhere. But also please do give this video a like and a share. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Ellie, thank you so much for jumping in. In addition to the Celebration panel, what would you like to plug?
Oh, well, you can find me and my work on Daughters of Ferrix. It's a show. I don't know. I'm
YouTube podcast.
Slaving away over the script for the next one, which is going to be, I don't know. I'm putting everything I got into it, so we'll see how that turns out. It's our 30th episode, and it's becoming kind of a magnum opus of mine, and so it's all downhill from here. No, you can Daughter of Ferrix is at Ferrix Pod on most platforms. am at the Letter Bomber. You can find I'm around. You'll just keep an eye out. You'll see me around.
Sounds good. Good. Ash, again, great as always, especially the Mon Mothma content, but everything else as well.
I try.
Yeah, there we go. I know we know where you can find you in person next Saturday, but where can they find you on the internet?
Yes, so you can find me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok. Being unhinged, being a Mon Mothma obsessed, at Bejeweled Mothma. Or if you only want updates about Mon Mothma, if you don't care about Ash as a person, you just care about Mon Mothma, which Same. You can find us at Mothma Updates on those same platforms. And you can also find us on YouTube at MothmaNet. It's like the HoloNet, but it's about Mon Mothma, so it's better. And right now we're doing a 50-day countdown to Andor series, which is a lot of fun. We've been having some really cool guests on, talking about various things that could potentially relate to Andor season 2 in any way, shape, or form. And it's been a lot of fun so far. We're still looking for more guests. So if you want to come on and talk about something cool Andor related, there's a lot of topics left available. I wouldn't even be opposed to some overlaps. Yeah, you can message me on social media about that. And that's it.
There you go. You can, again,
I was going to replug the celebration panel. But...
Yeah, go for the celebration panel, and then Ellie can plug your celebration panel.
Senator Rebel Chancellor, who is Mon Mothma, Friday, the 18th of April, 4 to 5 p.m. on the fan stage. Come see me, talk about Mon Mothma for an hour. In return, you will get a sticker and a friendship bracelet.
Ooh.
It is a Mon Mothma campaign sticker, but
amazing. I would like one of those.
It'll be a good time.
Ellie, go ahead and plug your
Star Wars Celebration Japan, April 20th, Sunday, 4:20. Let's go. 10:20 JST. I think. I don't really know. It's on the schedule. It'll be on the schedule. Me, my co-host Chris Kempshaw, history, whatever. That's the thing. Come be
excited.
There. Buy tickets to fly to Tokyo. God knows I barely can, but I already got it. So
there we go.
Woo, going broke.
Sounds good. You guys, if you're going to Celebration, definitely go to those panels. If you're going to Toronto Comic Con, come to our panel. Next Saturday in 12:15 Eastern Time, room 203D. Taylor Swift on screen. It'll be fun. Joel, thanks as always for leading the conversation. Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID20234 on Blue Sky, JID20234 on Blue Sky. Of course, I always handle the Ion Canon Blue Sky account as well as Star Wars Underworld Blue Sky account. And of course, you can always follow me or find me Star Wars Underworld Discord this Friday, Rebel Season 4, In the Name of the Rebellion, Part 1 and 2. If you want to see Saw Gerrera's giant head talking to Mon Mothma, that'll be a good episode.
There we go. It'd be fun. You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. Mostly Instagram and Blue Sky at MEG1138. Twitter, still on Twitter, NEG485. Also on Instagram, beaches.foodie, BEACHES.FOODIE. I got some, if you want to bless your timeline with some fried chicken, is how I roll. And again, next Saturday at Toronto Comic Con, give us a shout. I'll also be there around on Sunday. Manny Jacinto, checking that out as well. So yeah, please do check that out. Of course, yeah, Blue Sky Ion Canon. Yeah, probably gonna throw some Instagram stuff for Ion Canon, maybe Underworld, and maybe send some stuff over the Culture Slate. Those folks as well to expand the convention offerings, because gotta love that con life. Looking forward to it. But yeah, that's about it. Next week, Joel and I were talking about well, first off, I forgot to mention my other podcast, Comics Podcast, Track Room Comics Reviews. This coming Wednesday, Joel is joining Chris and me to talk about Legacy of Vader #2 with that wonderful cover that I'm looking forward to diving into that fantastic comic book. If you aren't reading it, you should all read it. Join us 6 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern this Wednesday. And then next Monday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, we are talking about what is fandom? What is our fandom community? Yes, reference to Star Wars, but also probably more broadly as well. Talking about real world contexts, religions, different things. So should be a fun conversation. But until then, Ellie, Ash, good to see you guys. Joel, have a good one. Till then, let's blow this thing and head home.